mind you. What would you do for that? Miss Dior, the new parfum Dior.
There's certain things come along in your life that you feel you have to stand up and be counted about.
It's said that we're cynical about politics these days. The turnout at elections and our trust in politicians is at an all-time low. But when something affects you, your family, your livelihood, or your most cherished beliefs directly, then it's a different story.
Most of us had never done this before. We didn't know what we were capable of. And of course, in the weeks after that, we realised that we could defy the police and sort of do more and more.
In the last 15 years, Britain has seen a flourishing of people power. Mass movements of ordinary folk focused on single issues.
I was definitely angry. I was angry about how society had been divided.
Where there's frustration with the political process, this film is about what happens when people come together to change things, when they stop watching the news and start making it.
Let's take on the government, let's take on the legal system in this country, and let's try and make a difference. We can only want.
People power can be brutal. 15 years ago, Trafalgar Square saw the most violent riots in living memory. Alistair Mitchell was there.
You could feel tides of anger going around the crowd. Often you didn't know why.
Looks like nothing was football match, doesn't it?
He was 17 and studying for his A-levels.
I was 18.
The only way
It was
I can describe
exciting.
it is it becomes like a medieval battle. Well, I wasn't under any illusion that I was going to prison. Footsteps on the
What a year, 1990. Jeez. It was on history.
One of the officers grabbed my throat then and said something like, "Right, you could be dead within 6 seconds." More than 300 arrested in London's night of riots.
It was supposed to be a peaceful march and rally. Organisers claimed 200,000 people turned up. They had come to protest one of the most controversial policies of that most controversial Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher.
It's Easter a week after that, wasn't it?
The community charge, or poll tax to those who opposed it, was to be a flat local tax on all adults, to replace the household rates set by local councils.
The domestic rates have been abolished. They were a most unfair tax. That the enemy is not the community charge. The enemy is high-spending Labour councils.
For months, anger had been fermenting across Britain against the new tax that many saw as unjust, hitting the poor harder than the rich. Alistair Mitchell lived in Brixton and was part of a workers' co-op. Robert Ray lived with his mother and sister in Bermondsey, South East London. Neither belonged to any political party, but for many on the left, the huge turnout was an indication of a deeper resentment.
It was one last hurrah of the left, one last hurrah, one last charge, if you like. The decade leading up to March 31st, 1990 was a very divisive one. You had a lot of social conflict, you had a lot of industrial conflicts going on. It was a tinderbox. It was because all these people were so angry.
It is a personal decision whether people pay or do not pay.
My wife, then girlfriend, and her partner were making a video film about the poll tax movement, and my role was to take stills.
Police first encountered problems after a sit-down protest outside the gates of Downing Street, in defiance of march organisers. Trapped in Whitehall, Alistair found himself at that flashpoint.
I was able to climb a sturdy steel bus stop and ended up about 7 foot in the air, and I was able to have a much better view up there and shot off a series of stills.
Different accounts blame either a violent hardcore of protesters, including anarchists, or poor police tactics for what was to follow.
It did come a point where I did get very frightened, I remember, and that was when a police horse arrived to attempt some sort of crowd control.
Mounted police tried to control the crowd, but were pelted with missiles from a nearby building site. One policeman was knocked unconscious.
One end of Whitehall was sealed off, and at the other end, police were trying to move demonstrators back into an overflowing Trafalgar Square. The result was chaos and running battles between police and some demonstrators.
A lot of what I saw I'd never seen in my life. I was taken aback, yes. It was difficult to know what to focus on. There was just so much going on.
Police later estimated that amongst the huge crowd, there was a hardcore of around 3,000 determined troublemakers, but others were also drawn into the riot. Back in Trafalgar Square itself, Rob Ray was to be one of them. The size of the crowd meant he knew nothing of what had been happening in Whitehall, but he was at the front when a phalanx of police in riot gear tried to create a path in the square.
You had the police trying to clear the crowd or attacking the crowd, depending on which side of the fence you were standing on, really. There's a bit of a sort of fragile confrontation happened where they were better in pushing their way through the crowd. I ended up getting
Except with the Earth Riots.
Side of a shield.
Isn't it funny when the Tories are in power?
It was
they get a lot of
glancing,
this.
it sort of went.
Says it all, doesn't it, really?
And then there was a bit of a follow-up. There was more of a glancing blow than anything else. As a 17-year-old, you're not really going to think like, well, okay, I need to go home now. That's not really how human nature works. There is an element to it that you either you get this fight or flight. You either do stand or you do run. For whatever reason, I didn't choose to run.
From then on, Rob Ray was increasingly involved in the medieval battle he recalls.
No,
More
we
trouble
teach
erupted when a
taboo
line of
out
police
then.
vans tried unsuccessfully to enter the square.
Effectively, what happened was when the vans drove into the crowd, they became trapped because there was so many demonstrators in front of them and to the side of them where they couldn't reverse. A couple of people had been hit by the van.
Who did these cameras were filming that day?
Antagonise the crowd even more.
And they might have had to stop filming, right? Or just do it indoors, in the studio, I mean. I wonder.
People were swarming around it. The vans were being hit with whatever was handy.
What did you use?
I've probably used a variety of things. As I say, it's a long time ago, so it's hard to know what. Probably would have been placard.
Remember this when we were younger and we called police cars jam butties.
It's about what you're doing and why you're doing them or whatever. They go out the windows. Have them on.
Oh, the days of the Black Mariah. We knew there was trouble when we saw them.
On occasion, I did throw a rock.
When I used to play on the motorway when it was getting built,
In the head.
and every time I heard the police, I thought they were coming for me and Wayne.
A helmet. Can't imagine it probably done that much damage. I don't know. I did turn back through the bad and jump up in the air. I scored a goal, which isn't again. That's not the most logical or rational action of a person to take, but it's all in the. It was at the time.
Mounted police made several charges around the square. In one, a young woman was knocked down and run over by horses.
It took me 3/4 of an hour to an hour to get into the square, and I was looking all around for my colleagues. I couldn't see them at all. I mean, they're lost. So I eventually.
Irresistible energy. What's on Mocha?
Go on, give me a car, please.
Made my way north.
Let me win one. It's a collector's piece, wouldn't you, Melanie? Yes, I would.
To some, the images of that day became icons of anarchy. To others, of potent resistance, finally, to the government of Mrs. Thatcher. More than 500 people were arrested. 132 people ended up in hospital, including 57 policemen. Officers tried to clear Trafalgar Square by forcing the crowds through London's West End. But the trouble continued there.
There was cars getting turned over. There was windows getting broken in cars. There was a police charge, and there was the crowd retreat and going forward and going back. It was what it was. It was a riot.
I'd seen quite a number of people being arrested by the police, but I saw a young man. I caught a glimpse of him through the legs of 4 or 5 policemen who were around him. It was clear that one of the officers around him, I couldn't tell who, had their thumbs under his chin like this. I shouted out something like, "Don't do that, you could kill him in 8 seconds." Having shouted this, I noticed a couple of the officers peel off from the group and make towards me.
Alistair was arrested, roughly,
Whoa.
during the course of which tendons in his index finger were
Oh,
snapped.
God.
He was held in a police cell overnight.
And one of them said, "Book this one in for obstruction and assault on me."
Rob Ray, meanwhile, had been home to change before returning to a still smouldering West End to spend the evening with his girlfriend in a nightclub.
And there was sort of small televisions behind the bar, and there was obviously showing footage of the day.
And if people want to change the law, then they vote for a change in the law. Nothing can condone this sort of behaviour.
The riot was a national trauma. The tone of newspaper coverage prepared Alistair for a rough ride in court, charged with affray, assault, and actual bodily harm. Nothing, though, prepared him for the specific allegations against him.
My great surprise was the actual bodily harm was alleged to have been a bite on a policeman's hand. Now, I had no recollection whatsoever on that Monday morning that my teeth had been anywhere near a policeman's hand, let alone having bitten a policeman.
Rob, meanwhile, was a wanted man, as pictured in the newspapers. He had left home and moved quietly to an address across London.
I was staying in North London, and I went down to the newspaper shop, bought a newspaper, and there was a picture of me on page 3. And I went back to the place I was staying in shortly afterwards. I think it was a long time ago. I think shortly afterwards I got a phone call saying that the police had raided my father's house.
Whoa.
And my mother's house. What action did you take? I went and got some legal advice, and then I handed myself in to the police.
You turned yourself in?
Yeah.
But he got cold feet and went on the run. After a few weeks, he returned to London, intending finally to give himself up. The police were ahead of him.
Was it a classic dawn raid?
Yeah. Footsteps on the balcony. Knock, knock, knock. So then again, it caused a bit more trauma because obviously my mother seeing her son get taken away and my sister seeing her brother getting taken away, it caused quite a lot of anguish and sadness.
Rob stood trial in April 1991 and was sentenced to 21 months. Alistair Mitchell was convicted and jailed. He was bailed on appeal, but lost again. He spent time in 2 prisons before finally having his conviction quashed by judicial review.
That occurred in mid-1993, so it was a long time to wait for justice.
Of course, I regret the fact that I caused pain to my family, but can't, given the context within which it happened, I can't say I regret what I did, because I don't. That's not to say I'm proud of it or I wear it as a badge of honour. It's just that was within that particular context, within that particular time, that's what I did. So there's no point in having regrets about what you can't change.
The poll tax riot was the violent outpouring of people power. It scarred the nation. None of the mass movements since then has followed a similar course. 8 months after the riot, Margaret Thatcher was forced from office, in part because many Conservatives deplored the poll tax. Within months, the policy was dead.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11 and a half wonderful years.
With the fall of Mrs. Thatcher, some of the fizz went out of Parliament.